Hello, everybody. We're going to get started, so I just wanted to give you a quick intro. My name's Joyce Strong, and I am the founder for Confident Women Consortium, which is us. It's an organization that I founded to bring women together to come to a safe place and talk about hopes and dreams and struggles and stories. So people will come and speak about experiences they've had where they've had confidence, or they'll talk about challenges, or you'll find some people in this room tonight who are venturing out into new things or hoping to, and they're going to be inspired by the stories that you hear. So tonight we have Nicole Jambard. She's a good friend, and she is going to tell you why she believes with every bit of her heart and soul that you can do more than you think you can, because she has. So, welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here this evening, Joyce. Thanks for encouraging, inviting, and volunteering me for this assignment. But no, in all seriousness, I really was happy to have the opportunity. But I think we would have a lot more fun if we got to know each other a little bit better first. So here's what I'd like to do. In 5 minutes, I'd like each of you to stand up, and I'd like you to go up to somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, and then afterwards I'm gonna have you introduce the person you just met and tell me one nice thing about them. So go ahead, find somebody you don't know, just take a minute. So pretty funny. At first I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, people are gonna be like, what is she asking me to do? And all the enthusiasm is terrific to see. So how about if I start on this side of the room? Linda, I'll have you start. Go ahead. Yep, and you can pass the microphone around.
This is Joyce. She's a wellness coach, and she's also a nurse. She has an awesome office in Nashua that's inside of a gym, and we're going to get together because the gym is my favorite place to be. And
Very nice.
We're going to help each other out.
I think so. And this is my friend Linda. And I just want to show you something. She's jacked. She's a bodybuilder and my kind of girl.
Fantastic.
So we're going to talk some more.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies. All right, how about somebody else?
Yeah,
Okay.
you do. Oh, Jess.
Yeah, because we're being filmed.
I met Jen, and Jen works for Caldwell Banker, and she is working in the marketing department, and she is here with her friend Jen. Oh, so Jen and Jen? Oh, wow, Jen and Jen. And this is their first time here, and they're from Westford, and yes.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gail, and I met my nice friend Vicki, who happens to be sisters of Nicole. And Vicki works for Costco, correct? And she's from Westford. She graduated in 1978, and you're a lot younger.
My name is Vicki. I am Nicole's sister. It is true. I have another sister here, Christina, and my other sister, Karen. Not really, but yes. So I met Gail. It was wonderful. 32 years in law enforcement, retired. Just started teaching at a tech school in Concord, New Hampshire. Sold her house in Chelmsford. Yes, and moving up to New Ipswich. New Boston.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Good job.
Yes.
Good job, ladies. All right, how about somebody else?
I met Jen. She's a realtor. She lives in Groton. She's looking to see how she can, what's the next step, what's the next level. She wants to grow and find new friends here.
Excellent. Thank you, Diane. Go ahead.
Hi, I met Michelle, and she got laid off, but now she's getting licensure in insurance, so she's going to start her own business. And she's also been doing some health coaching, or trying to, and she helps her husband with his business. So that's a lot of business stuff.
Sure is.
I bet you there's a lot of math involved.
Sure is. That's right. Thank you.
And yes, I met Linda, and Linda is a nurse, and currently she's doing work on her home, so she's keeping busy there. She's not working right now, but she will be going back to work, I'm sure, in the near future. And and I had a lot of energy from her when she sat down. I could feel a lot of energy, and just made me smile. So it's a pleasure to meet you, Linda.
Thanks, Michelle. Melody?
Hi, I'm Melody Miller, and I had the pleasure of meeting Angel over there. She's the proud grandmother of 5 grandchildren, 2 girls and 3 boys. She's also a nurse. She works with the elderly, who are mostly nuns. She's from Concord, New Hampshire, but she was born in Groton and grew up in Hollis, New Hampshire, which is next door to where I live. So, yeah, got to know her briefly. Wish I could have had a few more minutes to learn how she knew Nicole and how she was here, but we'll find that out later.
Thank you, Melody.
Hi, I'm Tricia. I had the pleasure of meeting Steve, Nicole's husband.
I'm sorry.
He too got dragged here, huh? Let's see, you do some work on the farm. You live around your family, round and round and round. You all live on the same street. Mom, dad, and your children. What else? Grew up in Hollis and still in Hollis.
Yep. Good job.
Pleasure meeting you.
I met Christina, and she is Nicole's sister. She is a nurse at St. Joseph's Hospital. She grew up in Westford, Mass., and she now lives in Merrimack. Her father was a hairdresser, cosmetologist. Grandfather, I'm sorry. And he opened his salon in 1949.
Did.
I met Marianne. She is from Groton, but now she lives in Pepperell. She has a salon in Pepperell. That's what made me talk about our grandfather. He had a long, wonderful career. He loved what he did. And I often think that nurses and cosmetologists, we're in the people business. We are with people all day, and so I feel a little bit of a connection with Marianne because of that.
Thank you.
I'm Steven, obviously Nicole's husband, and I met Trish, and I found out she's an accountant and does taxes and hates it, but she's been doing it for 30 years, and we all need her, and she's very good at it, but she also has 2 children and 2 grandchildren, and she loves her grandkids more than her kids, as I do, and she lives in Pepperell, and we know some of the same people, and that's about it.
My name is Angel, and I had the pleasure of meeting Melody, who is a native of Florida, but she lives in Brookline, New Hampshire, which got us talking about Brookline and Hollis, because, you know. She has 2 children, and she works in Nashua as a computer software engineer. And we just kind of smiled at each other, and so I'm sure there's more to learn about Melody.
Thanks, Angel. Thanks, everybody. Great job. I have my introduction, though. Okay. I met Melissa. Melissa here at the Confident Women's Consortium for the first time tonight. She's also starting up a new place called Little Gyms for kids to get into fitness training. Just pretty cool. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you all for indulging, I'd say all of us at this point in going through this exercise. So I'll tell you a little bit about me and why I'm here. I'm Nicole Jambard, and I am currently a sales training manager at UPS. I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a stepmother, and I'm a grandmother, thanks to my oldest stepdaughter. I live in Hollis with my husband, and he's right, 3 families right in a row on the same street. So I have taken on this opportunity tonight to speak in front of this group and sharing some very personal stories, because women need help women more. There's not enough opportunities for us to get in a room and to share and make us all feel a little more normal, like, yeah, you know, I know what you mean, or yeah, boy, I can still get to where I want to go, even though I've made mistakes and even though it seems daunting. So that's really why I'm here, and what I hope that you get out of it is a belief that really comes from proof that you can do more than you think. So as I was preparing for this assignment, I really, I thought about how I wanted to articulate my story. And it's around three main points. And I'm going to come back to these three main points a couple of times as I'm telling my story tonight. Okay? The first point is that you have control over your choices. You're going to hear me say control and choice a lot. So here's the first part of my story. I'm not going to go way back to Westford, although yes, born and raised in Westford Public Schools. I went to school at ULowell. It was ULowell when I started. It was UMass Lowell when I finished. I began working at UPS while I was at ULowell and never thought it was going to be a career, and here I am 29 years later, still there. Kind of worked my way right from unloading trailers on hot afternoons during the week and starting there. So back in those years, and some of us are closer to our 20s at this point than myself, but I think back to that time and I'm getting my life started. Nice not to have homework. You go to work, you take on a few more work hours. I began to have a little more money. And I said, I have new choices in front of me. How am I going to make these decisions? How am I going to choose? How am I going to spend my money? How am I going to, what do I want to do? Oh my gosh, a new world, becoming independent. So, time goes on. I get into a long-term relationship with, who's my first husband, and, kind of just having fun, doing what I wanted. Years go by. And finally, I said, well, geez, I from a very young age, as a very young girl, you think, well, what was my life supposed to be like? Well, I remember what my father used to say, well, you'll go to school, you'll graduate high school, and then you'll go to college. And after college, you'll get a job, and you'll work for a few years. And then you'll get married, and then you have some kids. And, at a high level, that was the story. So I kind of said, okay, I guess that's how it's going to go. But I really didn't give any thought to anything concrete. In those years, it was more about, okay, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to go out with my friends, I'm going to do what I want, be independent, I'm on my own, just kind of live it up. So eventually, as I'm approaching my late 20s, I'm thinking maybe I should settle down. I mean, I'm, not getting any younger. So, I decided, with my first husband, we decided to get married. We'd been together 7 years before we got married, right? So really not many goals there, just kind of winging it. But yeah, so we get married. And, but I see other things going on around me. I'm thinking about this, pretty cognizant of other things going on around me. I look at my friends, I look at other people in my family. And they're settling down, they're getting into relationships, they're moving away, moving to places, starting their own lives. But suddenly I'm feeling uneasy because I feel like, they kind of know maybe what they want at this point. I've just been kind of going with the flow here, thinking everything's okay. Is it? So I'm getting a little bit uneasy. And I didn't really know how to articulate it at that time. But I was making choices all the while, and those choices were mine. And at the time, I'm like, I don't think I was fully owning some of those choices, but they were all mine. Put it right out there. So, you talk about choice. The second point I want to make before I move on to the next chapter here is that while the choices you want might not always be available, you still have choices. So first we talked about the fact that, you have control over your choices because you've made them. But the second part that I'm going to talk about now is that sometimes you're not always going to have choices that you want, but you have to make some choices. So as I mentioned, I got married. And about 1.5 years into my marriage, some very significant things happened. Number one was I found myself really not happy in my marriage. And in trying to talk about it, I again, I just wasn't really sure why, but I knew I wasn't happy there. I felt like I kind of missed out on some things. I didn't do some of the things I thought I should have done in those earlier years. So here it is, a year and a half in my marriage. I'm not happy in my marriage. And then I'm looking at the consequences, I'll say, of my choices. You know, I was living it up. All of a sudden, I'm like, wow, I can't pay my bills. You know, and you know, with car payments, and at that point I had two. It wasn't just my vehicle, it was my spouse's vehicle, and all this other personal debt with nothing to show. I'm $50,000 in the hole. That's pretty deep. So now I'm getting kind of stressed out. If that wasn't enough, I'm like, boy, am I just stressed out? I don't really feel that well. Something's not right. It's not what you think. So I go to the doctor and I'm like, boy, you know, I ache, my body hurts. I don't know what's wrong, I'm never sick. Well, come to find out, I have lupus. I don't know if you know what lupus is, but it's an overactive immune system that flares and remisses, and it attacks your body. It attacks your joints, it attacks your organs, it attacks every tissue in your body. And it's like a fire that rages out of control in your body. So at the time, it's like a month before I turned 30. I got these 3 things on my plate. And I'm trying to process it all. And I'm just not happy. I mean, of course, when you don't feel well, you're not happy. But you know you've got these other things brewing in the background. And I knew that it wasn't right. So again, back to that, you don't have the choices you want, but you still have choices to make. Yeah, I knew my whole life just wasn't right. It wasn't right. So I decided at that point that I decided to separate from my first husband. I got my own apartment, and for the first time in my life, I had to face not having any of those goals established, really knowing what I had to do, and I had to live with the consequences of my choices. So all the while, you know what we do, right? We put a smile on our face, we just go out there, we get that stuff done, we multitask, because that's what women do. We just, put that front up and, yeah, it's all good. But boy, talk about some soul searching. I really had to think. And it required and I had a lot of alone time to think about it. First time ever at 30, I'm in my own place thinking about, okay, what are you going to do? You got a life-changing health condition now. What are you going to do? Got a pile of bills. What are you going to do? Are you going to continue with your marriage? So I started going to a counselor to help me sort out some of those things, because as I'm going to mention next, when you know what you want, sometimes you got to ask for help, right? But I went and began to sort it out, and I knew that I really had to change course in my life. I knew where I wasn't where I wanted to be. I knew I wasn't going to have the right support to move forward, to go where I wanted to go. So my marriage was over. I'm like, okay, well, let's get my health under control first. So I got some help with that, and after a few months, under a doctor's care, you can get some of that stuff under control, or at least initially I could. I started to feel better. But then I had to really attack the other stressor, which was the money part. So I went out and got another job. Now here I am, I already have a full-time job. And at the time I was in sales. Anybody ever work a sales job? Is that a 40-hour-a-week job? You know it's not. So I went and worked on the weekends. I worked on Saturday nights for about 6 months, driving vans in and out of Logan Airport for a Littleton limousine. And hey, it was like making double money. I wasn't out spending any, right? But, making a little extra money so that after I got my monthly paycheck, and yes, being in management at UPS, you get a monthly paycheck. But after I paid my bills, I had no money. So that was what was providing the groceries. And I remember at the time, my niece, who was 11, she was visiting me one Saturday, and she goes home. She tells my sister, "Yeah, Auntie has no food in her cabinets." Yeah, it was tight. It was tight. But I learned a lot, and I also, learned as part of those choices that sometimes you got to pick the choices you don't want. Choices like sacrifice. Choices like limits. Nobody likes sacrifices and limits, but I knew that there was an end game to that, and I actually wrote it down on paper, and I knew there was an end game, but nobody likes those, and I knew I didn't want to live like that forever. So I still had those choices, and what kept me going is that I kept my eyes on the prize, on the end game. So let me talk about the third reason why you can do more what you think. And this has to do with your want, okay? You're gonna figure out, or I figured out, I know what I want, but I have to communicate and talk about it, and I have to ask for help. I was always the person who's just like, yep, I'm just gonna take care of it myself. I'm good, I don't want any help, it's my problem. But you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I give, I'm under. So what did I do? Well, first, for the money part, I got some professional advice, to try to just lay out a map there. Well, that was pretty black and white. I also made sure that I was making the right commitments to my health. I mean, that's the ultimate priority. Taking your medication, seeing the doctor. Nobody likes going to the doctor, but you do it. And, ultimately making sure that I was doing the right things there. But then I had to ask my family for some help too. One was, at the time, when I was in that $50,000 hole, I had 2 car payments, and my sister very nicely helped me finance one of those vehicles and drive it for about a year so that I didn't have to make 2 car payments. That was a help. I asked my mother to borrow money. No one likes doing that. But, you gotta do what you gotta do. And then I also had my brother help me find a free kitchen table and some chairs. But you find people to help you. So for somebody like me, to ask for help, that was pretty big. Pretty big. But things were changing. Those were tough, formative years for me. And it was really 1 year. All that happened. I'd say it was probably more like 8 months. The fallout, the, come to Jesus moment, and then the, what are you going to do about it? Ask for help, right? So those 3 things. You have choice. Sometimes they're not always the choices you want, but when you know what you want, sometimes you have to ask for help, but you have to talk about it. I was not always a strong communicator. I didn't ask for those things, and I had to live with the consequences. So what happens next? All right, so I'm working that other part-time job. I'm like, all right, food is good. Got some food in the cabinet. Paying my bills. Feeling pretty good. I decide I'm gonna, start moving on, in my personal life. I start seeing somebody new, and then that just gave me even more incentive. Now I've got some help, some emotional help, some support, some encouragement. So I had control over that. Who was I going to spend my time with? Who are the people that are going to help me continue to work towards my goals, to help me feel my best, help me be my best? If I wasn't being my best, what are they going to tell me? Staying, more away from the people that thought you'll never be able to accomplish that, or easy for you to say, all the naysayers, getting that away from my life and moving more towards, again, the things I knew I could control. I had choice there. I had choice in who I was going to see. So things are going pretty good, for, I don't know, a year or so. But then, the lupus, it just got worse. It got to a point where just the regular drugs couldn't do their job. So I had to go through, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but your choices are really drugs or more drugs. And the medicines I decided to go were a much more aggressive course of medicine. And I actually had intravenous chemo monthly for 6 months and quarterly for a year. And I know that some of us in the room have been through that. And as you take more of that medicine, it progressively makes you sicker, but it does its job. I mean, for me, it quenched a fire. It slowed down a very overactive immune system. So I would go to chemo on Friday afternoon. I'd have downtime during the weekend. Sometimes I felt okay, sometimes I didn't. I'd be back at work on Monday, and it was exhausting. But it made me feel good emotionally because it was a great distraction. I felt productive. And, again, I always believed there would be something on the other side of that that's going to be like, all right, we're going to get over that hurdle. So, again, I had to make some tough choices because, as you know, there are side effects with drugs, especially intravenous drugs like Cytoxan or cyclophosphamide. It's very poisonous and it has long-lasting consequences. And then during that time, not only are you not feeling your best, try taking a bunch of prednisone. I put on 30 pounds, looked very cushoid, hair falling out, but I was still there to talk about it. It was tough. Being in sales, too. Hi, I'm your UPS account executive. Oh my God, what's wrong with you, right? I looked awful, but nobody ever said that, but I knew they were thinking it, right? They're like, oh my God. And all the while, it's just kind of funny to say that. But my gosh, I look back on that and say, wow, what an endurance. So, I got through that, and I really came out of it with a message to myself. I said, let's focus on the things I can do. Look, I'm not going to fit into my favorite clothes, big deal. I know I'm not going to, accomplish other things I want to accomplish right now, but I'm going to get there. So I can't think of these things down here. I gotta think about all the can'ts. I call them, what can I do? How can I do it? Those were the beliefs that got me through that. And again, those were choices. Okay? Not every minute of the day did I choose that. Sometimes I chose to be irritated or upset. But they were choices. So I had control over those choices. So got over those hurdles. And all the while, you know how hard something like that can be on your family, right? He stayed. Can you believe it? He actually stayed. So, I figured this guy's all right. So once things calmed down there, we decided, after we were together for about 4 years, we ended up getting married. So that was a definite reward at the end of a really tough time. Definitely, and support. So there you go. So you're thinking, okay, more choice, right? Again, back to that, sometimes you have, certain choices and sometimes you don't. Well, great. It's 2003, so we're 4 years past the fallout at this point. Things with the lupus have calmed down. Get married, getting settled. But, at the time, I'm 34 years old, thinking about, well, what are my long-term goals at this point? Seems like the crisis has been averted a little, maybe, for 5 minutes. What do I want? Now it's not just about me. What do we want? So, okay, what are we going to build for a future? How long, I'm 34. What do I want to do with my career? Of course, as long as my health is where it needs to be so that I'm able to work. What do I want to do with my career? What do I want to do with other personal goals? How are we doing with, what we're working on together to build a future? What do we want to do about a family? Well, Stephen has 2. Do we want to have a family? That was a tough one. Sorry, I don't know if I can talk about that, but, those drugs take their toll. So, that wasn't going to be an available choice. But, God love him, he's like, whatever you want to do. Do you want to adopt? I got 2 great kids. My sisters have great kids. We can steal them. But, again, it was hard. It's still a painful thing. But it didn't mean I didn't have choice. I did. So, time went on. We saw how things went. We've built our life. And hey, we have a great life. We made choices to continue to build our great life together. And it's all been, it's been terrific. It gets better all the time. But yeah, that's always going to be a sore spot. But again, it didn't mean I didn't have a choice. It wasn't going to be the choice I want. So time goes on, and you finally get your arms around something and you gain control. And I said, okay, I feel pretty good. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna work hard. We're gonna build our life together. I'm gonna achieve the things I want to achieve at work, and I did. I gained some promotions. I got opportunities there. It enabled us to get to a new place financially. We built things together, and all in that time, for the next 5, 6, 7 years, things are going great. So it's about 6 months before I turned 40, and the doctor's like, yeah, so it looks like your kidneys are starting to fail. Can't make this stuff up. I said, okay, well, so now, once again, I've got to think about, what are my choices here? Oh my gosh, what are you telling me? Well, you're either going to have to go on dialysis, or you're going to have a kidney transplant, or you're going to have big problems. Okay. So what can I do about it? I said, and he says, well, why don't you decide what you want to do? Look at that, I still had a choice. So we go and, so we went and visited the dialysis clinic, because there's 2 types of dialysis. There's peritoneal, and there's, what's the other kind? Yeah, thank you, there's hemo and peritoneal. So there's 2 types of dialysis, or you can get a transplant, but you got to find a donor. Oh my gosh, this goes against every grain of my being to have to ask anybody for anything as it is. Never mind an organ. So, but believe it or not, we went, and began to tell people, yeah, this is going to happen. And we communicated, and we got back to that, say what you want, talk about it, and ask for help, right? That's what we did. We said, yep, we're having a crisis here. Going to come along in a couple of years. Can you help? 7 people. My sisters, my mom, a couple friends, all said, yep. They all tested. Can you believe it? Like, I'm asking you for an organ, and you're actually you're willing to do that? Oh my gosh. So they did, and so again, kidney disease is a very slowly progressing condition. It was still another 3 years before it was time. So by the time it was time, some things had changed. One was my mom aged out, because if you're over 70, it's a no-go, so she was too old. And one of my sisters, the one not here, developed a MRSA infection, couldn't do it. One of my other sisters had some blood pressure issues. So it came down to 2 people. It came down to the remaining sister and one of my friends. But we talked about it, and my friend, she said, well, you know what? Even if you don't pick me, she says, I'm gonna go do it anyway. I'm like, wow, what a woman. So, you know, the 3 of us said, well, it seems like she really wants to do it. I guess, you know, let's go. So 5 weeks later, it happened. And again, I can never pay her for that, right? You talk about asking for help, but you can't reciprocate like that. What do you do? And sometimes it's going to happen. But ultimately, there are other ways to help other people, which is what we do, which is what we should do a heck of a lot more, because people need that. So what has happened since then? Well, I can tell you this, you know, I reflect upon those things. It's really shaped the things that I've wanted to do with my time. A lot of us want to catch up on Netflix or sleep more. I don't know. I find myself going to Girls Inc. a lot more these days. Girls Inc. is a youth enrichment program. They're nationwide, but I work with the one in New Hampshire. It's a place where they encourage girls to be strong, smart, and bold. I serve as a mentor. I serve on the board, and I volunteer for the committees, because that is a great way to give back. And a lot of people say, well, my gosh, Nicole, you work a full-time job. You go to the gym. You have a husband at home. Does he eat? You're never there. And then...
He does everything at home.
Yeah. And then, you know, you actually have time to do that, but it's true when you hear people say, if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. And it's true. To me, it's like, oh yeah, off I go. You know, my brother just said to me on the phone tonight, what, are you out again tonight? Well, yeah, I'm not mentoring or going to a board meeting or something like that. This is actually fun. But, you know, I've found ways, because I have choice, because I have control over those choices, to do things, to fill the bucket, to, you know that it's something positive. And I think we forget that sometimes. We look at this thing in front of us, it's this huge mountain of whether it's a task that we don't want to do or we want to do but we're afraid. Maybe it's a really aggressive goal that you say, there is no way on this earth I'm ever going to make it. Or maybe it's just something that's really troublesome or upsetting that you know you have to deal with and you just avoid. Well, the choice comes right down to us ourselves. What am I doing about it? Am I making a choice, first of all, or am I avoiding it? It's easy just to, I want to look at that. Or do I know what I want, but I don't want to talk about it? Because if I talk about it, I might have to commit to doing it. And if I commit to doing it, it's going to be hard and a scary place, and I don't want to do that. What is it? But we're faced with those decisions all the time. But it comes down to really why I'm here tonight, and why I think we all can do more than we think we can. Because we have a choice. We have a choice how we spend our time. Put the phone down. Or if you can't put the phone down, instead of using the social apps, use the phone app or use the text. Okay, I know I'm dating myself by speaking in those terms. Okay, but pick up the phone, walk in the other room and go talk to somebody. Tell them what you're thinking about. Tell them what's bugging you. Like our mother always says, I'm flunked mind reading 1 and 2, right? None of us can read minds. It's a lot easier if we can just say, this is really bothering me. And even at the risk of knowing it's going to irritate the person that you're telling, that this really, you know, oh, I can't believe we're talking about this again. You're afraid they're going to say it. But you haven't resolved it if you keep going to that same place. And somehow we have to articulate those things. If there's one thing I would want you to leave here with, it's this. It's that doing more than you think you can, you have to believe that. And you have to look back into what you've been doing the last days, weeks, and months to prove it to yourself. We do this, and we do this every day. And we just take for granted that we do it every day, but we do it every day. So what is it? What is it that scares you, that makes you think, this girl is out of her tree. She doesn't know what she's talking about. There's no way I can possibly do everything because I can't do this one thing? Or I can't get it all done because of whatever? I don't know, what is it? But that's really, up to you to think about. And I was thinking of giving us all a little bit of help in doing that, just that. So this is what we're going to do at this point. And we won't make this as public as the introductions, I promise. But I just want you to talk with somebody at your table, and in the next 5 to 8 minutes, I want you to ask them, what's one thing you're looking to accomplish that you just can't seem to get it done? You just can't seem to move forward in that task. And I will share mine, I promise. But let's take a few minutes. Right now, it's 8 o'clock. Just pick one. Just narrow it down. We don't have all night. Just pick one, and pick one that you'll be. I will look for a couple people to share. Why don't we take about 5 to 8 minutes to do that, okay? All right, so let's bring it in. So we were talking about that kind of one daunting task, goal, impossible mountain. Anybody want to share what you might have taken away, or no?
No, I'm not saying nothing.
I will. Thanks, Ange. You rock.
No, actually, you rock. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's for the, it's not to make your voice louder, but to help with
The video.
Oh, is this I could really understand and identify with what you said, Nicole, especially about the choices that you have to make and those choices that you don't want to. And it sometimes it comes very untimely in your life. I have always wanted to do some form of entertainment. And one of the things that I kind of started to do was take a class to do voiceovers. Whether you work in commercials or whether you work in a podcast or do narrative work somehow, I've always kind of wanted to do that. So I did find a class. I took the class online. And one of the things that I have to do in regards to doing this is that I have to meet with a producer and I have to make demos of my voice so I can put it on my own website and kind of sell myself, if you will. But then again, choices came up in my life where I didn't want to make some choices, and that was my sister and I had to deal with having to sell property that was my folks' who they have passed away, and we had to make a really tough choice about, do we sell the property, do we keep the property, do we gut the house, do we refinish the house, what do we do with this? And so, we ended up having to sell the property, and so all of my stuff kind of, and I'm sure my sister's stuff, was put on hold. Now I'm free of that now. I've gotten my own new house, trying to get myself into it and try to be cool in it, and then the voiceovers are like right here, and it's like, oh gosh, I've got to get back into this. I've got to learn how to use my equipment. I've got to call the producer. I have to do all this. But it's almost like, oh, I feel stuck in a way,
But I think you've kind of steered me in the right direction, Nicole. You know, it's like I think I am now seeing light from the cloud I was in, from having to do all this stuff. So I think that I'm going to be able to step up and pursue this goal. And I know that once I do it, I'll feel better. But, you know, it's taking that step, you know. You've got so much else going on in your life. You're working like a crazy person. You've got grandchildren to babysit. You've got, you know, a husband to take care of. And you've got a new house to refurbish and so on. And it's like you've got to step back and make that time for yourself. Sometimes it's hard to do, you know. Sometimes it's self-esteem issues for me, you know. That's always been an issue for me. But I work on that on a day-to-day basis. But it's just trying to get back on that horse, you know.
If you had a baby step to take, one small thing, what would that be?
My baby step?
Toward the voiceover tomorrow.
I would call my producer. I would call the producer.
There you go. You're on your way.
Okay.
There you go. Good share, Angel. Great share. Thank you. Anybody else want to share?
I'm kind of shy and I stutter, so just bear with me. I'm a big nerd, so. I grew up with older brothers, so nobody ever told me I couldn't really do anything because I just would always do what they did right. And you know, my whole life it's like I could just do whatever I wanted. That's what my parents always told me. And as I've gotten older, I realized that many women, many girls don't feel that way. Like they don't realize they can do things that they can't do. They feel put down. They have bad role models. They have people that are constantly telling them they're no good, they're not good enough. And you know, that hurts. Like when I see young women that are so capable that are just unable to do that. So you were talking about Girls Inc., and I admire that so much about you. That's always been a dream of mine to somehow get involved with young women or young girls and just try to, you know, boost their confidence. You know, try to go away from shaming, but more about, you know, these are the mistakes you made. How can we learn from it? What can we do to empower ourselves? So I recently took up mountain biking. I'm a 41-year-old. I don't know what I'm doing out in the woods on that bike, but I'm actually kind of good at it. There's a program called Little Bellas, which does mentorship with young girls between the ages of 7 and 18. And it's through mountain biking. They get them on bikes and get them out there in the woods, you know, teach them how to ride. You know, when they fall or wreck, you know, it's a learning opportunity and, you know, just kind of empowering them in that way, but at the same time being, you know, in a mentorship program with them. And so, I'm like, I could totally do something like that, but, you know, I work full-time, I have small children, you know, I have no business out in the woods on a bike anyway to begin with. So that's been kind of a thing I've been thinking about, and, you know, just hearing what you were saying, you know, you've got the prize at the end, you just got to keep your eyes on it and head for it, and, you know, I guess.
She's going to send that email tomorrow.
That's my baby step, I guess.
There you go. It starts there. It starts there. Good job. Good job, Melody.
I have no doubt.
I have no doubt. She has been kicking butt on her bike because I see it.
I've been following her in, what do you call it, Strava? Strava, yeah. And you're going to take her.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Another story, but, so.
That's right.
Anyone at this
Anyone
table?
else?
I know there's some exciting stuff going on over here.
Can I just say something about what she said, though?
Yeah.
Her over there.
Who, Melody?
Melody.
Melody?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's Melody. Yeah. I just want to see, like, what you said about young girls and everything, and how, you know, these days and these times, girls and boys, but I'm going to say girls because I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm all boys right now. But I think it's tough because there's a lot of problems in the world with image. I don't know about any of you guys, but I grew up thinking that if I wasn't thin, I wasn't good enough. If I, you know, I'm not the prettiest girl in the room, but you know what? I got a personality, it'll kill you. But we all have to be thin, and we all have to have this, and you all have to, I just would love, like you said, to be able to teach young girls that you don't have to have any of that. You just want to be, let's be healthy, let's be fun, let's enjoy our lives and learn things and whatever, but in society today, it's all about image. The magazines and everything are showing these girls that they have to be the skinniest person on the, finally they're coming out with larger size things, which because you don't have to be skinny to be beautiful, but I never thought that anybody would pay attention unless my muscles were huge, or, oh wow, look at her arms. Like, they're not gonna pay attention to me unless I have huge arms or something, you know what I mean? So I think the same thing. I think that girls need to be mentored to learn about themselves and what they can do in the world, not just how they look all the time. That's it.
Thanks, Linda.
That's very good. So we know two people in here involved in mentorship programs, Nicole, Melody, so hit them up.
Vicky, Karen, a lot of people.
Oh,
Definitely.
Karen, yeah.
Yeah, Vicky, Christina.
Vicky, Christina, yeah. So more sharing? More sharing?
Well, I promised I'd share. So I'll share, and then I'll summarize, and then we'll be done. So my share is this. My seemingly impossible mountain has to do with I love to stress eat. And I've been seeing Joyce for a couple years and trying to work through this, and you know, my poor husband has to live with it, and you know, others, maybe you can empathize, but I'm working hard to break that response. And if any of you have read The Power of Habit, for example, by Charles Duhigg, and that cue, response, and reward, I'm trying to change my, you know, that cue is I feel the stress, my response is to eat. I'm trying to change that response. And we got into that a little bit in our last talk when we were talking about getting out of the habit of being yourself. But that seems like my big mountain. Maybe it's not everybody's mountain, but it's mine. And this is a continuous process. The three things I talked about, that we have control over our choices, that although some choices aren't always available, you still have choice, and that you have to know once you know what you want, you have to talk about it and ask for help possibly. That's really the three ways that we're gonna get through and get to that point where we can do more than we think. You know, I continue to work on that. At times I overcommit myself because, you know, we all think we're Wonder Woman at times. You know, other times it's exhausting. But really, at the end of the day, it makes me feel alive. So I'd much rather be overcommittal and tired and rewarded that way than any other way. So if I can do it, you can too. Thanks for listening to me tonight. I appreciate it.